The Bible never says that all things are good. Listen, the hurt that you have experienced in the past is not good. The molestation that maybe you have gone through in the past is not good. The pain or bitterness, somebody killing your brother, your family member, is not good. But the verse doesn't say God that God is saying that it is good, that all things are good. God is saying, I can miraculously bring good out of a bad situation or out of bad situations. God does that over and over again. God brings good out of bad situations, and that is a miracle. God begins to teach us this principle. If you go back to the first book in the Bible, the book of Genesis, you will find that over the 3 chapters of that book, in Genesis chapter 47, 48, 49, 50, the last few chapters of the book of Genesis, you find that God is teaching us a story on how he can bring good out of evil. It's a story of Joseph. When Joseph is just a child, not even a teenager, he is out in the desert playing with his brothers, and a band of thieves come along, and the brothers have this sinful idea of selling their brother into slavery. That's what they do. They take the brother, they give him to the thieves, and they take the money and they pocket it. Then when they get back home to dad, they say, "Oh, Dad, you aren't going to believe this. Our young brother Joseph fell into a well and he's dead." That's a bad situation. All things would happen. As things would happen, Joseph eventually goes from bad to worse. And he ends up in this pit, in this prison. There in the prison, he begins to have dreams because he's a person who understands some of the supernatural things in the world during that day. He begins to rise to power. And out of that bad situation, some good things begin to happen in Joseph's life. So while we're not directly told in Scripture, over the course of time, Joseph begins to free his brothers. We're not totally told in Scripture the process of Joseph forgiving his brothers. But Joseph begins freeing his brothers in his heart. He lets go of the grudges toward his brothers because of that new freedom he has experienced. He continues to rise and rise and rise until in the country next door to where his family lives. But he's the right man of the governor. So God has used a bad situation, and Joseph rose up as a leader of another nation, and some people will say he was like the prime minister. He was a second in command. So as fate would have it, in this long story toward the end of the book of Genesis, the next door nation fell into hard times, and a famine came into the land, and they decided to send some emissaries from that nation to the nation that had plenty of food. And guess who they sent? They sent Joseph's brothers. Now imagine the story, if you will. From the neighboring country, Joseph's brothers come over to beg for food. And they are now sitting before the right-hand man of the governor, who is their little brother. He recognizes them.